Stephen, does that? Oh, Stephen,
21st, you said?
you think the 21st would work, or is that too far out? Or I mean, we've got the holidays, and first week is kind of a wash, and second week is.
I don't have any problem with that date. As far as when we're going to publish the rules,
Yeah,
I don't know how that fits into that. If we'll want to meet one more time before we publish, or if
sure.
we're gonna, even after we publish, there's gonna be other things to do as far as working on the brochure and all that.
I think
Yeah, that sounds about right.
okay. Yeah, because if we, if we want to publish in February, then that meeting on the 21st could be like kind of like not the last chance, but like just the last meeting, and say, okay,
Yeah,
we're going to publish on this date, so get all your final comments in, and I think that's plenty of time. Plenty of time to get people to work, the subgroups too. Give the subgroups time to meet during the first 2 weeks of January, and then come back to the big meeting the third week. All right, well, we'll throw that out there. I'll throw that out there when we get to item E.
And then we got our electrical license board, but that's going to be the week after that. So that should. I apologize in advance. I'm pretty under the weather today, so I'm going to be coughing and sneezing throughout this meeting.
You're not alone with the coughing and sneezing. It's allergy time.
Good morning, Mr. Stover. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Good morning. I will get on camera in a moment. I'm getting organized.
Okay, sounds good. Good morning, Miss Mace. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am. Hear you
Okay,
loud and
good.
clear.
Are you able to see me?
I can.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yes.
Oh, I can see myself now. Okay. For some reason, all of these settings just popped up, and I was trying to figure out if I had them correct. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning, Stephanie.
Good morning.
Good morning, Miss Matthews. Can you hear me?
Good morning. Yes. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Good morning, Ms. Kemp. Good morning, Ms. Rochetti. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can. Yeah. Full screen. Okay, well, we'll start this off. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here. So as you know, this is the Residential Solar Retailers Stakeholders Workgroup. And we will have, do we have any opening remarks? I don't know if Jeff or Stephen want to say anything before we move on to the reports?
Stephen Leary, Assistant General Counsel. I just want to point out a couple of things before we get started. First of all, I want to thank everyone for all your assistance and feedback during these subgroup meetings. I was there for a couple of them. I was there for the compliance, the enforcement, registration subgroup. In addition to what we discussed in the meeting themselves, I also got some written comments from Ms. Mace and Ms. Kemp, and I've gone over those. What I've done is I've taken all the comments I've gotten so far, I've sorted through them. I've incorporated most of them into a new draft, and a new draft of the rules, and I tried to send that out last night. So hopefully you have that in your email. I might have missed a couple of you when I tried to do that. So if you don't have a copy of the new draft of the rules, if you just let me know, and I'll be happy to email it to you. Thank you.
And I'll hop in real quick. Just want to say again, thanks to everybody for joining. We won't go through full introductions because I think that would probably take up the entire hour of the meeting. But we'll point out, I think we have some new guests from PUC who were not here last time. So if our PUC friends want to introduce themselves.
Yeah, I'll introduce that. I'm
Okay.
Mike Honeycomb, the Director of Public, when I've invited from the PUCA, who's a project manager in the Office of External Affairs with me, or External Affairs Specialist is her title. And then I've got Chris Birch, who's the head of our Customer Protection Division, and he's a real subject matter expert on customer protection, and they also do the registration of retail electric providers. So wanted him on here to get his input on some of these rules. So thank you all very much for letting me add some of the smart folks from ECT.
Thank you. The more the merrier. And on our side, I believe we have joining us for the first time is Steve Bruno, Deputy Executive Director. Steve, you want to say hi real quick?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Sorry I wasn't able to join the previous meetings. Excited to be here today and to say hello. And I know some of you from a long time ago. It's nice to see you all again. And just really want to say thank you to all the work that you all are doing to get these initial rules drafted. It's a huge help for us. So thanks very much.
All right. Anybody else wants to raise their hand, pop up, feel free at this time. Otherwise, I guess we'll get into the reports from the subgroups. We did have, I believe all the subgroups were able to meet. Enforcement, I believe, was the last one that met on Monday. And I believe Mary Hoffman is not here. Was anybody from licensing wanting to talk about the consumer outreach? I'm sorry, that's registration. I'll go first with consumer outreach. Let me back it up, members. Consumer outreach, that group met on November 20th, just right after the last big group meeting. We did talk about kind of breaking down what the outreach group is going to be working on primarily at this sort of first part of this project. And delineating between kind of some of the different things that are mentioned in the bill. Number one, the educational brochure. Mike and the PUC folks are kind of be leading the charge on that. I believe is what we discussed. Then second, the disclosure form, separate document. Both things required for the salesperson to sort of have on hand, distribute to the to the customer. We kind of talked about, what that looks like. Are you required to give both before you start kind of entering into a contract conversation? I think what we came away with is the brochure is something to kind of have on hand as an introductory piece. It has more general information, more kind of 30,000-foot view information. And then the disclosure form is really almost like part of the contract. It's something you have to have sort of on top of the contract, spelling out in very plain language what is in the contract. And then we also talked about, should that include either as part of it or separate, a truth in lending form with that truth in lending language, which could run several pages. So talked a lot about that, how this is going to be distributed, how we will post all this information on our website so it can be easily downloaded by salespeople or the company, whoever needs it. I think that kind of covers it. If any of my fellow consumer outreach work group members want to hop in, feel free. Or if you want to give an update, if you've been working on anything. I did distribute the TDR has a draft disclosure form that we kind of put together, very kind of rough draft. And so I distributed that to everybody in case we wanted something to kind of work off of. But I don't know if anyone had time to work on anything in the interim. I know we've all been busy getting ready for end of year. So if anybody from the work group, consumer outreach, wants to hop in, feel free. And if not,
yeah, Jeff, I think
Yeah.
you did a good job summarizing. I have not had a chance. I just barely found this calendar invite again, so I'm glad we made it here. The draft that got released on 12/10 for review is what I've just pulled up, and then I'm going to look through emails from you to go look at that disclosure form.
Sure.
As mentioned on our call, I think that the summary page that customers or consumers will read at the very beginning should be utilized for those disclosures at the top of their agreement, making sure it's right there, front and center.
Yep.
And then the other things we're still working through. I do appreciate that we included PPAs in the new draft. That's good job on that. I know that Steve was working on that and he got it done. So I'm still combing through this. But yeah, I think you did a good job summarizing at least the preliminary things that we're working on.
And before we get sidetracked, let me just cut us off at the pass. I think there is some debate about PPAs still, but we'll save that for after this after the work groups.
Sorry, I didn't open up a new.
No. I just want to make sure we don't go off down that path because I think there is some conversation that still have about PPAs, but we'll talk about that during C under the updates on the kind of overall talk about the draft rules. So,
okay, great.
But yeah, great.
Yeah, Jeff, I'll comment. I appreciate your update. I thought you really captured that discussion well. I think the communication subgroup meeting was very productive, and look forward to seeing the next product.
Great. Yeah, and we have some time on those. I think like with some of these other groups, I think we'll be looking more at January as kind of trying to get close to having a product ready for the whole group to look at. If maybe by the next meeting, which is going to probably be late January, we can have some drafts for everybody to look at and distribute. That'd be a good goal to sort of aspire to for 2026. New Year's resolution number 1 right there. So okay.
Hey Jeff.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just real quick, I anticipate that I will have some feedback on the draft disclosure. I haven't had a chance to put it together. My goal is by maybe Friday the 19th or so to put together some sort of email. I understood from Stephen earlier that we're okay to send emails to our work group without creating kind of walking quorum deliberation concerns. So I was just going to put together some suggestions for the consumer brochure, any edits I've got to the disclosures. And then during our meeting, I said I was going to try to find model truth in lending forms that are available from the federal agencies. So I kind of owe the group that kind of summary. So I'll be working on putting those together. And my goal is to just put those in an email to the group by end of next week.
That's great, Matthew. Thank you. Yeah, no, it's nobody's behind at this point, or we're just all still trying to figure out all the assignments we've got. Really, there are multiple threads. So, okay, if there's nothing else on consumer outreach, Stephanie, did you want to say anything? And
No,
if not,
I'm good. I'm
okay.
sorry. No.
No, it's fine. That's fine. And then I think I'm going to cover registration because Mary Hoffman is unfortunately out today. Stephen, you were in that as well too, right? The registration licensing.
Yes, I was.
Yeah. So I think she sent us something. The registration work group discussed. Let me pull it up. Oh yeah, insurance requirements, continuing education, and then the requirements for solar retailers to notify TDLR of change in employees. There was some good, healthy discussion on that. How those requirements are going to work, how we want to specify. I'll go back to insurance requirements. I think where we ended up on insurance, after getting some feedback from some folks who had kind of more experience on the industry side, it's kind of standard to have a 1 million per occurrence general liability. Was that correct, Stephen? Not professional liability, but general liability.
Right. So 1 million per occurrence and 2 million in the aggregate for general liability. The original draft rules also had professional liability, which is errors and omissions insurance, and we're looking at possibly taking that out. We're interested in whether or not that would be a reasonable requirement. I'm planning to meet with someone from the Department of Insurance soon.
Right, we have a meeting with TDI set up, right? Already? Yeah. Okay.
So about that, and also about the types of insurers that we should allow.
So when we get some more clarity on that, how that wants to go, but I think we have at least a ballpark idea of where that's going to go at this point. On continuing education, we did talk about some of these kind of industry standard CE that's out there. We're going to do part of my homework. I think I was going to look a little closer at some of that. I think Mary was going to look at some of that as well, because I think we all agreed there's no need to reinvent the wheel. If there's already CE that's out there for some of these professional certifications, no reason not to just accept that as acceptable to meet the continuing education requirements. I think in general, though, we kind of wanted to bump back the CE discussion until kind of later in this process, because we have until 9/1/26 before registration starts. No one's going to even be doing CE until 27 or 28. So we kind of have some time, and so just to prioritize different things, we kind of have some other things that need to come first. But I think we will get back to the CE discussion probably in January, February, or January at the latest, I think. So we'll maybe kick that off for the next meeting, for the January meeting. And then the requirements for retailers to notify TDLR of change in employees. There was a lot of discussion, I recall, about that, about kind of not, some folks feel like we don't want to put too much burden on the employer. They're like, every single time there's a change in staff, you've got to notify TDLR. Also on us, like, what are we going to do with that information? Is it just creating more paperwork for us to, who's being served by that? Or do we want to just do it at renewal? I think some folks felt like, okay, if it's going a whole year, that's maybe too long, because you might have people coming and going, of course, in that time frame. So I don't Stephen, I don't recall exactly where we came down, or if we did come down on any kind of one place on that.
That's fair. I don't know that we came
yeah.
to a consensus, but
Yeah.
one thing we had talked about is, as far as record keeping, requiring the retailer to keep kind of personnel records of the date of hire and date of separation of the salesperson, so that if there is an issue, a question about what company a particular salesperson works for, there'd at least be that requirement. And I did incorporate that suggestion into the draft rule. So that's something we got talked about.
If we need it, then we could ask for it. If we don't need it, then yeah, it's not kind of burdening us with additional paperwork. It's not burdening the employer with additional, like, okay, you've got to fax this in or email it in or do whatever. But if you have it and we need it, then we'll be able to get it. That's what's really important.
And we also talked about, for the salesperson's registration, having them report it to us on their application, what company they're working for.
Right.
Which probably wouldn't be a thing until the renewal.
Right.
So we did talk about that. And I agree. I don't know that we have a consensus, but there are some solid ideas that were thrown around, and like I said, I incorporated some of them into the draft.
Okay. Yeah, and I apologize. I haven't even had time to look at the draft. I just thought I'd just wait and be surprised today at the meeting. So as we dig into it.
Mr. Nance has his hand raised.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, just a quick question, and I'm not in the registration subgroup, so I don't know if this was raised, but I like y'all have the draft rule on the duty to update registration information, where you kind of put it on both the retailers and the salespersons to keep their registration information updated. I was going to ask, did you consider some kind of additional language that if TDLR sends a notice to the information they have on file, like notice is effective in any kind of legal or regulatory notices to the last known address are effective, if just to avoid kind of the excuse like, I didn't get such and such notice. Well, you didn't get it because you didn't keep your information updated.
We have something like that in our Chapter 60 rules, which is our rules for the procedural rules of the commission. It applies across all departments. We haven't contested cases that there's a presumption of receipt if we mail something by certified mail to the last address. And we currently have a rulemaking that will allow us to send a notice of alleged violation via email instead of mail. So yeah, I mean, that's a topic that's really addressed in the Chapter 60 rules as opposed to the individual program rules. But so I don't know that we would add that in these rules, but it's a good point.
Great. Well, I think that's all I have for registration, unless somebody else wants to add some more context on registration. But great meeting. A lot of really good feedback from folks in that group. So they're my A+ group at this point. Sorry, I'm picking favorites. But I think next is compliance and standards.
I think I was in charge of compliance and standards. I was definitely there. We had some great discussion in this group. It was just, I was blown away by some of the feedback. And then also some people sent me some feedback after the meeting. I'll tell you what are kind of the top concerns that were discussed. Now, and I don't want to get into anything we're not supposed to get into, but the issue about power purchase agreements and whether or not we could regulate them, that was a concern that this subgroup had. So that's something that we talked about. There were concerns that the vast majority of solar contracts in Texas are power purchase agreements. And the thought of the group was that PPAs are substantially similar to leases, that they occupy the same space, they have the same function. And so the group had the idea to define leases in our rules to include power purchase agreements. I understand there's some questions about that. We've got some concerns about that. So I can't say that we're going to do that for sure, but that was sort of the subgroup's recommendation. Another concern that was brought up had to do with providing a printed copy of a contract to a consumer. So in the original draft, it was written that the salesperson always has to provide the printed copy unless it was unless they requested the electronic copy. So what a group member shared is that it's sort of an industry standard that they under SIA that they provide the paper copy only if it's requested, and that they provide an email copy. So we had some discussion about that and kind of the pros and cons of providing or requiring the salesperson to provide a printed copy of the contract in every instance. And after the meeting, I got some comments from Ms. Mace from AARP about that as well. And there were some concerns about the way the rule was drafted. If we require them to mail a copy of the contract after signing, would we add time to the period to cancel based on date of mailing? And I did not address that in these draft rules. I don't know that we would, but that was definitely a point of discussion. It was about how do you are we going to require them to always provide a printed copy to the consumer, or was it going to be optional? I also got some questions or by email, some suggestions about the language of the contract, whether it always has to be in English or whether it should be in the language that the contract was negotiated in. That came in written comments. That really wasn't something we talked about at the meeting. There were some questions about the disclosure sheet and whether that, and I know this may have also been touched on in the other group, but there were concerns about should that be provided ahead of time before the contract is signed with a period for them to review it, or is that something that is presented at the time the contract is signed? And I took the latter approach in the draft rules. So there was some discussion about that. Another major concern that the subgroup expressed, there was a part of the rules that said that a solar retailer has to take reasonable steps to remedy a violation by the salesperson. And there was a concern that that was just too broad, that it wasn't really clear what the retailer's responsibility was and what steps they had to take to remedy a violation. Ms. Rochetti from OAG had a concern that putting that in the rules would create a unreasonable expectation on part of consumer about what the retailer would have to do or what steps would be taken. In the draft of the rules, I responded to that by making that a little more concrete about what exactly a retailer has to do if they find out their salesperson has violated a rule. I don't know that we got it. I don't know how happy y'all are with that, and we'll go into that. But that is a concern that the subgroup had. The subgroup, particularly, I have to thank Sarah Kemp from OPUC. She sent me a lot of, I won't say she rewrote the rules, but she sent me a lot of revisions to the rule, a lot of suggestions. I incorporated some of them in the second draft. And she pointed out some various areas where the drafted rules might not comport with the statute. And she had a number of suggestions, a lot of kind of clerical suggestions or things that would make the rule a little more clear. So I have reviewed those and I incorporated those in the draft rule. And that's about it. But that was a lot for one meeting. I mean, we really dug into a lot of substantive issues. So that's about all. That's about all that subgroup did.
Great. So I think enforcement is next. Is John here?
Yep, I am here,
oh,
Jeff.
There you are. Oh, you're in a suit and tie. I didn't recognize you. Wow.
You always see me in a suit and tie. Sometimes. No. Thank you, everyone. Again, for those that have not had a chance to meet me, my name is John Mellick. I'm the Chief Prosecutor here for the Enforcement Division. When we met on Monday, we got to go over a rough draft of the penalty matrix that we'll be proposing. So for those of y'all who haven't operated in this space or kind of heard what we do, so in the Enforcement Division, obviously we take in all the complaints, review those, and obviously prosecute those when we seek violations. So the penalty matrix is kind of our guidance document for the prosecutors to be able to equally and kind of consistently apply violations across the program, and making sure that like violations get charged in like ways. We don't want to have a lot of disparity when it comes to those kinds of situations. So just kind of a rough idea of what it is, just for everyone's information. Basically, we take all the statutes and rules, and in this case, the statute and the draft rules that we have, knowing that some things are going to probably change, get added, moved around, and we put them into different groupings. We have Class A, Class B, Class C, Class D. Each one of those classes, so Class A being the least severe, Class D being kind of the most severe violations that might occur. And within each of those groups, we create ranges of penalties. Just for your kind of information, Class A being like anything from a warning letter to $1,000, with our Class D being $5,000 per violation that we can charge. And within each of those classifications, we try to create subheadings within that to try to group like violations. We have examples of these all on our website. So if you go to our website and click on any program and look at the enforcement plan, you'll be able to find that. Eventually, this one will be posted on our website as well when it gets finalized. And that way, it kind of just puts the public on notice, also the licensees on notice as to what potential violations they could be looking at if there ever is a complaint filed, and kind of what the realm of possibility in terms of penalties or sanctions might be in the event that a complaint ever does get filed. In kind of terms of how this will work, we had that initial meeting kind of going over our draft. The draft is kind of like our best guess of what we think this should look like in terms of how we think that these things should fall. I sent that out this morning to those members of that work group just to get any additional feedback on if we need to move, modify, rearrange any of those penalties, or move something maybe into a higher classification of violation, or maybe even a lower, just however it looks. The goal eventually will be to, once we get all that feedback and these draft rules finally approved, make sure that anything that gets added or modified, we incorporate those as well. We'll eventually take that finished product to this work group as a whole, just to kind of get y'all's buy-in and approval on that. Ultimately, we will send it to our commission for adoption, and then once they adopt that penalty matrix, that's what we'll use at that point in time. In the interim, because we still can get some, even though the rules haven't been officially approved yet, we still have statutory violations that are in effect. Not a whole lot, but we still have a few. In the event that we do get cases where we do need to take some sort of action, we can still do that even though this document has been officially approved, because our Chapter 51 authority gives us authority to assess any kind of administrative sanction or penalty up to $5,000 per day per violation. So what we would basically do is, if we did get a violation between now and when this thing officially gets approved, is we would just kind of use this draft as a guide and put some language in our notice of alleged violation that basically says that though that this is not like a Class A violation or Class B, it would be akin to that type of a violation. So that way we're kind of covered in that regard. But that's kind of what we're working on right now. Again, like I said, we'll just send that out to the work group members, although they got to see it on Monday, to get some feedback. Once we get that feedback incorporated, once we get these draft rules officially adopted, we'll come back to that group and this group as a whole to let you guys see it, make any comments that you might have on it, get all those wrapped in so that we can eventually get this approved by the commission so that we can officially adopt it and keep it and start using it. But that's really what I have. If anybody's got any questions, happy to answer them.
I think we're all good, John. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. I think we're ready for the main show. Now the opening acts are out of the way.
All right.
Steven?
Very good. So we'll talk about the draft rules. I understand I didn't send this out till last night. You may not have had time to review them, and that's okay. All right, we're not about to just go publish these. What I'm going to do, I'm going to walk you through. I'm going to share it on the screen and walk you through it. And the way I've set this out, I've put in red text in the rules the things that I've changed that are substantial. I didn't put in red where I've renumbered things, but things that were results of the subgroup discussion that I've changed in the rules. I'll put that. It's going to be on red. I've also put some comments in the margins. And I'll just kind of walk you through that, give you an overview, and we can talk about today, the parts of this that you don't agree with, the parts of this that, need changes. And then, after today's meeting, you'll have time to send me additional comments and feedback, and we'll, this isn't necessarily the final draft, but this is just showing the direction we're headed and some of the feedback that we received from the subgroup. Oh, I'm going to go ahead and try to share that up, and we'll just sort of walk through that. Oh, apologize. Make some reason every time I try to share something on WebEx, it takes a couple of tries.
Hey, Steve, would you like Alex to share it? Or
I want to. Give me just one moment. I'm going to try to share it myself, and then if that doesn't work, I'll have to do that.
that's probably easier for you, but
okay, I think I got it. Let's see. Okay. Okay. It should be. Okay. I think you got it up. Do you have the draft rules up?
we can see it. If you could
Okay, very good.
maximize it a little bit, it might be helpful.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Some of us old folks.
Yeah. Let's just zoom in a little bit. Okay, so we'll scroll down. I didn't change any of this. Now we got to the big part, and this is controversial. This is something we're not sold on one way or the other, but we added a definition of lease that would include power of purchase agreements. And I'm not sure about this language here. The idea was that power purchase agreements are so similar to a lease transaction that they should be encompassed in that definition. And the idea was that when you have a solar contract for a third-party owned system that's installed on the premises, that for regulatory purposes, we would consider that a lease as something that we do regulate. Now, that could change if we take the position that we can't. And I know that's something that's controversial, but that's why I made that change. That's something the compliance subgroup had supported. As far as I zoomed in so far, you can't really see the comments but that's okay. As far as the registration subgroup, they had suggested that we specifically require the retailers to have consumer contact information. So have a phone number and mailing address where a consumer would be able to reach the company. And that's something that they would have to provide to us and keep updated. So I thought that was a pretty good idea. I incorporated that here in the rules. 7122, this is about the insurance requirements. As I discussed, we had talked about this in the registration subgroup, and just sort of comparing what the insurance requirements are in this program compared to other programs TR regulates. It seems that $1 million per occurrence and $2 million in the aggregate is kind of the current trend of what many of our programs require. General liability seems to be the standard. Professional liability, that's errors and omissions coverage. I don't know that we would require that. It sounds like that's not something the industry currently may not currently have. So that's very much in the air. But that is something we talked about. Was what specifically the insurance requirements should be.
Hey,
So
Stephen.
Yeah.
Hi, I have a question about that section.
Okay.
So and it kind of goes with my comments that I submitted to you. Just a question. So for number, I guess it's 3, cover liability to consumers arising from acts of the solar retailer and all solar salespeople who act on the solar retailer's behalf. So does that cover kind of the installer? It doesn't sound like it would, right? And so if the installer is in-house and they're not using a third party, it doesn't sound like the liability is required to cover actions by the installer.
That's a good point. The problem is, for this particular program, we don't really regulate the installation. We regulate the sale of the contracts, we regulate the salespeople, we regulate the contracts, but as far as the actual installation, I don't know to what extent we regulate that in this program. The
Got it.
installation that kind of falls under the electrical program. I don't know. That's a good point. And so we'll need to talk about that. What do you think about that? Let me add a comment here on the margin. I know you had also sent this.
Yes, but it's nice just to kind of hear your thoughts on some of the comments that I've submitted. Thank you.
Yeah, and looking at the statute, which I also kind of drafted or helped draft, but looking at it, as far as what a solar company is required to do and what the prohibited acts are, the statute itself doesn't really focus much on installation. It focuses more on the sale, more on so I don't know that's probably something we should cover at some level. That if you we do have in the rules that you have to you can't breach your contract to the consumer. So
yeah,
I think it makes sense.
And because we regulate electrical contractors, assuming you're following the law and using, a licensed electrician to do the installation, which you should be doing, we have enforcement authority on that pathway.
But
right.
To the contractor, right?
Electrical contractors also have their own insurance requirements. Which,
they have their own insurance requirements,
from my understanding, you don't need an licensed electrician for all parts of the installation. That some of it could be done by it's only those that are dealing with electricity and the wires. So there is parts of the installation that could be done by somebody that isn't.
That's true. I mean, I think if it's the guy who's just, going up a ladder with a stack of panels and dropping them on the roof, that's not necessarily electrical work, that's kind of a gray area. We don't regulate roofers, so please don't bring up roofers.
Yeah, that's a good point. So we'll talk about that. And we are going to meet with the Department of Insurance, and I might have somebody else sit in on that meeting just so we can get a better understanding of what insurance products are out there that TDI regulates. That it's a good point. Just kind of.
Steven, sorry, can I also interrupt on that same provision?
Yeah.
Should it also, because like section in the bill, section 1806, 151, and 152 say, like where it's a solar salesperson authorized to engage in residential solar retail on behalf of the solar retailer. So should that same B3 provision also say, and all solar salespersons authorized to act on behalf of the solar retailer's behalf? Because in case someone's claiming to say that they work for that solar retailer, but they aren't authorized in real life, and yet it's kind of committing fraud.
So B3, you want to change it to who are authorized to act on the solar retailer's behalf? Is that what you want?
Just to be kind of consistent with statute.
All right. I'll pencil that in.
Thanks.
I think that, I think that makes sense. Okay. Well, let me just kind of, there's kind of 2 ways we could do this. I can kind of breeze through everything and then open up to comments, but it seems like this group kind of prefers just to kind of pause when we get to something that you want to discuss. And I think let's do that. That seems to be working for us. So yeah, and there's also a chat going on. Yeah, and I've had some back and forth with Mr. Stover about this topic about power purchase agreements and whether or not we can regulate them, and that's definitely at the forefront of my mind. So let me just move on and jump in if you have a question, or if you want to. If not, when I get to the end, you can also jump in. Registration requirements. That's not really a major change. I have added in the business name and registration number of the solar retailer on behalf. That's telling the salesperson they need to tell us on their application form what company they're going to work for. Again, that was a discussion about how we're going to track what salespeople work for where. Um, 7131. Ms. Kemp had written in with some comments about the exemption in the rule, not matching the exemption in the statute. And when I looked at it closer, she was right about that. There's sort of a distinction. It's technical, but there's a distinction in the statute between solar and residential solar, and this rule 7131, it kind of duplicates the 7130 as far as we don't regulate the contracts that were entered into before September 1st, 2025. But 7130 focuses on exempt systems. So it's really talking about types of solar energy systems that aren't residential or that don't fall under our purview because they're in larger buildings. More than 4 stories or 4 dwelling units. 7131 focuses on kind of the date the solar contract was entered into. I took out this language here, which seemed to be a problem, seemed to conflict with the statute. 7140, the change here has to do with printing the contract, whether you have to print out a contract and give it to the consumer, or whether you can do this through the through email. Again, this is a discussion point. I think there's differences of opinion on this. I changed printed to written. There were comments that came in. I think these were from Mr. Bench. I'm not sure. But there were comments about energy production guarantees, the terms and conditions of warranty, and the person's rights and remedies in the event of a default, that we want those to be clear in the contract and prominently displayed. So I incorporated that suggestion there. Those are terms, those are important terms of the contract that we don't want to be buried. We want them to be clear and conspicuous.
So I think I brought up some of the concerns about the printed contract.
Okay.
And so this has been something that I know we were trying to get in the bill language, or concerns that we brought up. Is there have been multiple cases with somebody with some cognitive decline was entered into a contract using or it doesn't even have to be somebody with cognitive decline. It could be an older person that maybe doesn't have an email to, that then the person created an email for them, and then the terms of the contract were then sent to that email. The older adult then had no access or didn't know how to access that email. And so they really have no receipt of the contract. I mean, I think there's a wide range of different reasons, examples of something like this happening. An older adult that doesn't know what's going on with cognitive decline enters into a contract. They don't have a receipt, so their caregiver has no idea that they have been entered into this contract. So in our case, we just have really liked the idea of a hard copy. And so, I think I would be advocating for some type of printed contract rather than it being optional, or maybe that's, I would love to kind of hear other people's thoughts. I know it can be a barrier and a hassle for everybody but I in a lot of cases, I think a hard copy is ideal. especially since you're entering into a $60,000 contract. You want to make sure that you have access and aware of the terms.
Right, and that was my thinking behind how this was originally written, was that they have to provide the printed copy.
If
The idea was that, well, the bill was designed in part to protect the elderly, and there's a stereotype about the elderly that may or may not be true, but there's the idea that they may not be as technologically savvy. They may have difficulty reading fine print, that it would protect them to have a printed copy, because then they'd have it immediately on hand. It could take it to somebody who could help them look at it, figure out how to cancel, and that if you let them send it to the email address, there's the idea that they may not get the email. They may accidentally provide the wrong email address. It just sort of opens us up to some problems. So I get those concerns, and I think it's a policy decision where we're going to have to kind of decide one way or another. On the other side, what I had heard,
yeah, go ahead, Stephen.
is that it's just sort of the industry standard. They have their own protocol for how to do this, and that's that they have. So,
I understand that, but there are a lot of bad actors that don't follow the industry standards. We've seen that in a wide range of different industries.
Mr. Finch was the one who advocated for that. I'm not trying to call him out. He had strong feelings the other way, and he's got his hand up. So go ahead.
I appreciate the concern and the commitment to ensure that, certainly elderly people need to be treated with even an elevated level of concern and care, especially when you're entering into a solar agreement. So one of the practices that the industry is also implementing from a financing perspective is that if you're over the age of 65, there are additional subset of questions that must be asked, including, would you like to receive a physical copy of your agreement? Is there anyone that you've authorized power of attorney, and would you like us to get them involved in this decision? I also think that what I don't want to do is solve create a cog in the wheel for the 99% of the transactions where 1% could be resolved, right? And so there, for me, I would push more on, we need to do video recorded calls with people and ensure that, there's a third party involved that's validating and verifying that we have the correct email address, because we've dealt with that as an installation company where there's rogue sales reps out there that have created fake email addresses. That doesn't happen in my company anymore. We verify and validate every email. We make sure that they get a copy of their agreement. We follow up with them, right? We say, hey, did you get a copy of that agreement? And upon request, we're always willing to send it. But man, these are like 80 to 100 page documents, right? And, we're trying to reduce, reuse, recycle, and streamline and use the technology as a tool. So I think that there's definitely a way to solve both concerns. I don't think forcing a hard copy on every deal is feasible or pertinent. I do believe that there's ways to protect these, our consumers. So, and we put those things in place.
I appreciate that, and I like some of the ideas, the best practices that you just recommended. As long as those items are included in this, then I completely understand. Not having a need to provide a hard copy, but I don't think I've seen anything else in here that would be getting at some of the best practices that you talked about.
I apologize, Jeff. I'm not able to monitor the chat while I'm sharing the screen. So could you, if comments are coming up in the chat, can you kind of keep me advised about that? I know there's been a few things popping up in the chat.
Yeah, there's been a little chat about PPA, but on this particular topic, I think Michelle says, I agree, it could be an option for a hard copy, which is what I think we have in the rule in the current draft. Requiring them to ask if you would like a hard copy, then they have to simultaneously provide it.
What if there was a switching the default where, if the goal is to also protect the elderly, where you could you provide, and I understand they're very long contracts, but I know that sometimes with the legal filings, what we do is like the initial is you do a paper copy unless everybody agrees to electronic service. So what if we did that where and I don't know if it's authorized in statute where we could separate, like if you're 65 and above, it's presumed that you get a hard copy unless they affirmatively waive to receive electronically. And then everybody else, it could be the other way around, or if that's going to make it complicated.
What if
just throw that out for thought.
Let me just throw this out there. What if we require that disclosure form to be printed? And it has the major terms of the contract. It has how to cancel. You have a 5-day right to cancel. Would that allay your concerns? If we put on that disclosure form that an email copy of the contract will be provided to this address. I don't know if that allays your concern or not. But
yeah, I think I could see that as a good option. I think there would need to be I can't remember if there are penalties in here for not providing the disclosure document.
There should be, and that should be a pretty serious offense, I think, because it's just such an important part of this regulatory scheme.
I agree.
Ms. Kemp, I don't know that I fully understood what your suggested change. Or what you said something about an opt-in system, but I was a little confused about it. What?
Good, I guess, but it may be solved by the disclosure solution. I was trying to think of another option to kind of help alleviate where if you made it for 65 and older, where the solar retailer or solar salesperson has to provide a physical copy of the contract to the individual unless the individual agrees to receive it electronically instead of in hard copy form.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah, I think that you could do that with everyone. I think that that's important for everyone because whether they're 65 or older, there are people that don't have email addresses, and there's people that actually want a physical copy. So I fully align with requiring the retailer to ask and some sort of acknowledgement in the agreement that says, I acknowledge that I've been asked if I want a hard copy and I am requesting one, or I am okay receiving it digitally at this email address. Like where we have a formal written consent. I also think we need to elevate the impact or the fine, make it very clear that if people create a fake email address or a sub email address on behalf of someone else, that is a very, that needs to be prosecuted. Like that's criminal. It's absolutely criminal. So Texas maybe needs to raise the bar there and say, look, there are additional fines and fees that you're going to pay if you are caught creating a fake or a secondary email address on behalf of someone.
Yeah, we could address that in the criminal convictions, or I'm not sorry, the penalty matrix in the enforcement group. Yeah, that's something that could definitely be addressed there as a class D, which is the highest class of offense, $5,000 a day type thing. So yeah, that could be addressed there.
Yeah, and the signing of an agreement on behalf of someone else, that's already a known thing, right? Everyone knows that's a federal offense, and we need to also bring it forward in some language there. So thanks for bringing that up, Jeff.
I'm adding this into the rule about disclosure that it has to be provided to the consumer in hard copy. No offense to this ad. I think that seems to be.
I go back to, again, if me as a consumer, I don't want hard copies. If you send me an email of that disclosure, I'm good, right? Like I don't want a bunch of paper. So I think it goes to say, let's have the consumer opt in if they want a physical copy of their entire agreement, including the disclosures, or not. And if they say not, then they provide the email address that they want it to go to.
Okay.
That would be my
maybe to give teeth to that, to also address Ms. Mace's concern is if it's not a penalty already that you don't, if you fail to ask that question, it could be part of one of the penalties. I don't know, just to reinforce the importance of, again, to help protect the consumer. I don't know that again, and that I don't know if that goes beyond statute. Just throwing that out there.
I think it would be hard for our enforcement folks to prosecute something like that because it would literally be a he said, she said, they would be able to say,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I did say it. And like, no, you didn't. So it would come down to whoever you believe.
I see that.
Well, these are
maybe another
acknowledgement forms. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
It's in a written acknowledgement that gets initialed on the contract.
Yeah, no, the written part, no problem. But yeah, when you're talking about verbal stuff, like that makes it really hard to prosecute on our end if you're just talking verbal. But yeah, the written disclosure, absolutely.
Mr. Nance has had his hand up for a while, and I do want to mention, I think he had a comment that requiring the contract or disclosures to be in a paper form might run afoul of some financing statute or regulation.
Well, I don't know. You might get that argument from stakeholders, if you're going to allow some sort of electronic disclosure of documents, I did want to point out that there's some state and federal laws that govern electronic signatures and retention and delivery of documents electronically that you might want to consider incorporating some principles of. Because with Stephanie, I think I definitely think documents should be accessible to the consumer and in a form they can read, and these rules may have a place in helping to ensure that. I don't have a particular place on exactly which document should be paper or not, but even if you decide that some documents should be paper, you could still consider specifying in these rules that if you're going to have electronic signatures or electronic delivery, you need to comply with the state law, which is the Uniform Electronic Transactions Act, that states that electronic signatures are valid, but has requirements for keeping those documents accessible and transferring them. And then the federal e-sign act, which gets into some of the consent. Like under e-sign, you're supposed to have a determination that the consumer prior to consenting is provided with a statement of the hardware and software requirements for access to and retention of electronic records. They're supposed to inform the consumer how they can request a paper copy of the record and whether any fee will be charged. They're supposed to determine that the consumer has provided affirmative consent electronically in a manner that reasonably demonstrates that the consumer can access the information in electronic form. So some of those laws from kind of the 2003 to 2007 era, when electronic signatures were really coming in, I think inform some of this. And yeah, I don't have a particular stance. You may get some pushback from industry about, this such and such needs to be electronic. But if you are going to allow some kind of electronic disclosure and you're concerned about ensuring that the documents are accessible, maybe you think about incorporating UETA, the State Uniform Electronic Transactions Act, and the Federal e-sign Act into the rules in some way.
Yeah, I did look into UETA, and my opinion in reviewing that, it does require that electronic signatures it provides for electronic signatures, but it didn't seem to prohibit our agency from requiring a paper copy. It didn't really seem to directly address that issue. I think we could, consistent with UETA, still require a paper copy. It really goes to contract law and whether or not an electronic signature is valid. I didn't look into the e-sign act. I see what you mean. I know that, for example, for motor vehicle installment sales, there's sort of this statutory long form contract that is now, I think, electronic. It used to be a paper thing. Those are good points. We'll consider it. We'll consider everyone's feedback. All right, Jeff, I think had to do we need a break? I kind of could use a break. Feel a little under the weather. Can we take a 5-minute recess? Come back.
That should be fine. We can do a 5-minute. Come back at 11:09. Well, we'll just round it off 11:10.
All right, I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Okay, so it's 11:10, but let's see if we got a few people coming in.
I am back and ready, but I know Jeff had to step out. I don't know if he's back here. We could probably move forward. I think a few other people had to step out or work coming back.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's all resume the discussion. You know, like I said, we don't have to resolve anything today. I mean, really, we want to get everyone's in and make notes and, you know, refine these rules. So, you know, if you do have to drop off or whatever, you still be able to provide feedback on. You have the draft rules in your hands, so you'll be able to, you know, make comments. But there's something we should probably talk about. Okay, so we were talking about the parts having to do with the printed versus electronic version of the contract. You know, that's an important point. I think there's some important policy considerations both ways, and we'll need to think about. Just kind of going forward with the other changes that I had made to the draft rules. First of all, do you have it up on the screen now? I think I'm still sharing it. It shows that it's still sharing it. Are you able to see the rules on your screen? Okay. Okay, so Code of Conduct and Prohibited Acts. This got into the compliance work group, had some changes. Where it has reasonable and prudent supervision, I took out prudent. That's something that Ms. Kemp had suggested, saying that it's not really what the language of the statute, which just said reasonable. I think it's redundant. I don't have any problem taking out prudent, so I took it out. The way the rule had been drafted, it said you have to include all required disclosures, and it didn't say required by what. So I made that change, saying the act of this chapter or other law. Number 7154. Sorry, that's 7150B4. That's having to do with, this was a discussion point in the compliance work group about what duty a retailer has to remedy a violation by the salesperson. Like I said, there was a concern that the way this was originally drafted was just too broad and unclear. It's talked about taking reasonable steps to remedy a violation. It'd be kind of hard to enforce. It might just. What I tried to do here was make that a little bit more concrete by saying that if the retailer becomes aware that the salesperson has violated the act or rules, if it involves false or misleading information, the retailer has to provide accurate information to the consumer. And regardless of what kind of violation it is, if the retailer becomes aware the salesperson has violated the act or rules, they have to admonish the salesperson in response to the violation, provide remedial training. I'm not sure about that. To me, that makes sense when we talk about what reason. So if you know your salesperson is violating some rule, not giving out that disclosure form, whatever, putting inaccurate information on the disclosure form, not giving out the booklet, whatever it is, you have to take some sort of corrective action. And I don't know that we want to say, well, you got to fire the guy. You know, I don't think we want to get into that. But I think we got to get into, you can't tacitly encourage them to do these things. And you have to take some sort of corrective action. Mr. Bench has his hand up. Let's hear it. What are your ideas?
Yeah, one, I really like this. I like getting detail more. Thank you for adding additional steps that need to be taken. You know, admonishing is subjective, so that's, you know, I know it gets difficult. Like, how do you admonish? I think the industry. Yeah, I think the industry does need to move into, you know, some sort of strike system. There's going to be more compliance, you know, so, and that's like things that Recheck is also tracking. They're tracking marks against retailers and sales reps that are reported, validated, and underwritten. So, I think that's a long-term strategy. I think this is a good first step. The one thing I actually wanted to address was section C, right beneath B. When a consumer timely requests cancellation of contract in accordance with the Act, a solar retailer must timely process the cancellation, arrange the removal of any installed equipment, and refund any monies advanced by the customer. I thought, who in the world is going to install equipment inside of a 5-day cancellation period, let alone get approval from the utility tariff? So just wanted to point that out. That was an odd thing to see, but I guess there are instances where there is other types of equipment that might not be solar related that are installed. So just want to call that out for everybody.
Yeah, well, I think that was some language in the statute, but I understand that that's not the usual way of things.
Yeah, but it's good that you called it out, because there are other devices that might be installed that are unrelated to the solar system itself. Anyway, just wanted to call that out. But yeah, I think a strike system or some sort of compliance, admonishing a solar sales person is, it's going to be difficult to track, but certainly, deactivating them if there's recurring issues, and turning them off and their ability to access.
Do we want to make it a system where the retailer has to report it to us? If your salesperson broke some rule that you have to tell TDLR. I don't think that. I don't know about that, but
it's a lot of work.
Maybe you have to admonish them in writing. You have to. We can do that. You have to admonish in writing and maintain a copy of it.
Yep. Some formal documentation would be good on the admonishment for sure.
Okay.
Like a write-up.
Does it sound like you can't fire them because you have to just provide training? Like, shouldn't it be based on the violation, maybe as necessary or as appropriate or something? Maybe I just am not reading it right.
Well, no, that's a good point. There's always the unintended consequence. What if we make it promptly take corrective action? That will at a minimum include a written admonishment.
Yeah, I like that. At least let's formally document it. They need to keep record of it.
Yeah, I do agree with that.
Because it's like, oh, I called them and told them. No, that doesn't work. We need a formal written notice to the sales rep, like, hey, this is what you're being admonished for. This is the act you violated, and you must discontinue this immediately, or else.
I'll work on that. Let's pencil that in, though.
Thank you.
Sure. John, I saw in the chat he had asked about, does the retailer need to notify TDLR if a salesperson is terminated from their company? I didn't include that in these rules. I don't know if that would be too much burden on TDLR to keep track of every retailer when they leave employment or leave. But that's certainly something we can talk about. All right, here we were talking about. I believe these were from Miss Mace. She had a lot of concerns about record keeping, particularly having to do with if a company had stopped operations and who's going to maintain the records, how long they're going to be maintained. In the original draft of these rules, we had in there that the retailer has to maintain the contract-related documentation for the term of the contract plus 5 years after the end. Well, I think the concern was if there's a warranty on the solar energy system do they need to say it's a lifetime warranty, say it's a 30-year warranty, whatever it is, do they need to maintain that documentation for the life of the warranty? And I'm not sure. I penciled it in that they do have to keep it for the period of the warranty. So it's the longer of the term of the contract or the term of the warranty plus 5 years additional. I'm open to comments on that, but that's what she's the one who had suggested that. Also, well, the registration group had talked about the seller retailer has to maintain during each salesperson's tenure and for 5 years after the dates of employment. I'm going to add in here and any written admonition, written admonishment pertaining to a violation of the act or rules. I'm going to put that in here. That way, okay, you can prove it to enforcement if it comes up. You okay. And Ms. Mace also had a lot of concerns, like I said, about ceasing operations. I incorporated some of her suggestions, but not all of them into this. So her concern was that she may be here to flush it out, but her concern was if a company decides they're going to stop doing business in Texas, how is a consumer going to be able to get a hold of the company to either to serve legal notices or to make a complaint? And so this is saying that if you're going to cease operations in the state, you have to notify TDLR and designate a record keeper for all these records that the rules are requiring you to keep records. And that you have to notify the department if you're going to if there's a change in the contact information for the record keeper. And the department has to provide the contact information for the designated record keeper. Mr. Bench, you got your hand up. You have some.
I'd like to make this a little easier for TDLR. The default record keeper actually needs to be electrical contractor that's being used by these retailers. The retailers are fly by night, come and go. They don't carry any long-term liability. Unfortunately, it's the installation companies that need to be defaulted and deemed the record keeper of all customer contracts because that's who the customer is engaging in business with. And it's on me, the installer, to keep records of all of my retailers, all the salespeople, and ensure that I know where they are and how to get a hold of them if I need them to indemnify me or I need to actually sue them for whatever violation of act they have. So I'd put something in there that electrical contractors need to be responsible for these record keepings. I don't. Yeah, that's just my take on Section F. It really does fall on me as the installer to do that.
All right. Any other discussion on this this point about record keeping and ceasing operations? That's something that really we didn't talk about in the meeting itself, but it was a comment that got sent to me after the meeting that there was a concern about this. Okay. Well, I mean, I think it's an important point that we should address one way or another about ceasing operation. We have rules like that in some of our programs. I know in our home warranty or service contract provider program, there are particular provisions about what to do if you're going to cease operations. And I think that's a topic we should probably address in the rule. I think that was just about it as far as the changes to the. Well, there's a few other changes in here I should talk about. So again, about the consumer contact information is a point that was raised that, and this is saying that if a consumer asks for the name of the company, asks for the contact information, the salesperson should provide current contact information for the company, for the retailer. As far as Finance Code Chapter 345, I had added this in. I believe that's something that Mr. Nance had talked about. The way the statute is written, it doesn't mention that chapter specifically, but it mentions the Truth in Lending Act and any state statute having to do with finance, I think is what it says. So this would be saying that you're going to be subject to disciplinary action for violating Finance Code Chapter 345. My only concern about adding that is that something that another agency is charged with enforcing. Mr. Nance, can you talk about that, about Finance Code Chapter 345?
Oh, yeah, sure. And about as to whether TDLR could enforce that, I don't have an opinion one way or another. I mean, I think it is possible for agencies to have concurrent jurisdiction over things where the jurisdiction overlaps. Just because the legislature has authorized one agency to do something doesn't necessarily means that that's exclusive authority. And then there's also exclusive jurisdiction, which that's a totally different thing. But anyway, it possible, might be possible for concurrent jurisdiction. I don't necessarily have an opinion on that. But if you did incorporate the finance code somehow, you could consider going a little bit broader than Chapter 345. Chapter 345 is only one type of credit. That's the retail installment contract, where the seller is entering the contract to take payments over time. This product could also, you could also have transactions under Chapter 342. And then there's also a general chapter 341, that prohibits like false or misleading advertising. So if you were going to refer to the finance code, I think a broader way to refer to it might be to refer to Texas Finance Code Title 4, Subtitle B, which would incorporate chapters 341 through 354. But yeah, that was just a thought. If you were going to cite it, and I have no objections to y'all citing it if y'all think that's within your authority, but if you were going to cite it, you might consider going a little bit broader than just Chapter 345, which is kind of a subset of credit. The finance code doesn't apply to leases. So if you wanted to incorporate leases, you might need to look to something like Business and Commerce Code Chapter 2A in the case of leases.
Okay. And I'm looking at the language of our statute, 1806-153. It says a solar retailer and solar salesperson shall comply with, and in paragraph 4, it says the Truth in Lending Act and any applicable state laws governing financial transactions by providing any disclosure required by those laws. So I think it's going particularly to the disclosure part. Maybe we should wrap that in. We should probably put the disclosure provisions of Truth in Lending Act and Finance Code. But that's a good point about concurrent jurisdiction, because we also have concurrent jurisdiction in a sense with the Attorney General's office, because they're charged with enforcing the DTPA, and under the statute, anything that violates the DTPA also violates Chapter 1806, which we enforce. So I think there's probably a couple of different ways where there could be concurrent jurisdiction. We could look into doing a MOU or something like that.
I think another chapter, and I don't know, I think you just put Chapter Business and Commerce Code Chapter 115. I think also 601 is from Business and Commerce Code, is around cancellation of certain consumer transactions.
Right.
I think that has to do with maybe something we also list, but maybe I think that also has to do with the Attorney General, right? Going after deceptive practices for cancellation. Just a suggestion.
Yes, that's a good point. 601 is the state right to cancel. It's a cooling off rule, and there's also a similar federal rule for door-to-door sales, essentially, or sales that are initiated in a location other than the sales company's place of business. And it provided for this 3-day cooling off, and we expanded that to 5 days with this statute. But that law probably still applies, and I think it is mentioned in the act. Take a look at that. So yeah, I'll have to highlight that and take a look at that. But as far as the Federal Truth in Lending Act or Finance Code, my reading of that right now is the disclosure provisions of that act that where we would have to require compliance with. I don't know how far we'd go to enforce that. Material. So it's in here that you can't materially fail to comply with the term of the solar contract. Someone suggested taking out materially. I think the concern was that that's kind of subjective. What's a material term of the contract? On one hand, on the other hand, well, are we going to take disciplinary action for any violation of the contract? It's probably problematic to say materially fail to comply if we're not defining materially fail to comply. I can be talked to either way on that, but in this version I took out materially. I could be talked into putting that back. I'm really not convinced one way or another on that. The fee language. So Ms. Hoffman isn't here, but there's certain language that about fees that tends to go into all of our program rules. And also in our Chapter 60 rule 6083 also deals with fees. So it was suggested that we include about a fee for duplicate license, verification of license to other states. That's pretty standard language that we would charge a fee for that. I don't think that's a big problem in this program, just because there's only 2 other states that I know of that regulate solar sales. But it could, as the program matures, that could become more of an issue. You'll see that more for barbering and cosmetology and massage therapists and things like that, podiatrists, all the things we regulate, where verifying someone's licensure status to another state can be kind of labor intensive, and we feel like we need to charge a small fee for it. I'm not focusing in on that. That's just something someone told me to include. About the age and the elderly enhancement to the administrative penalty. So as you know, there's administrative penalty and there's civil penalty. For civil penalties in the statute, the maximum penalty that TDR can seek is increased if the person harmed by the violation is over 65. For administrative penalty, the statute says that the age of the victim is something that we can take into account in deciding the amount of the penalty if the person is over 65. As it's probably been, as John Miller has kind of explained, enforcement has guidelines that they use that's not really binding on the commission, but it determines what kind of penalty they would ordinarily seek for a certain kind of violation. That may be something to, I don't know if that's already accounted for in those guidelines. I went ahead and added in, because it's in the statute, that in accordance with 1806-203, that we can consider whether or not the victim was age 65 or older in determining the amount of penalty. I don't think it hurts to put it in the rule because it's already in the statute. So it probably makes sense to put it there. So I wanted, someone has suggested that, and I didn't see a reason not to include it, so I included that. All right, so that's my rundown of the changes that I've made so far and the comments that we've received so far. Why don't I just kind of open it up? I know there are various issues that people want to discuss. Let me just open up the discussion. Does anyone have anything they want to discuss further? And it's okay if you don't. If you want to take some time to digest this and send me written comments, that's fine too. I think I think Alex, are we planning some more subgroup meetings after this, or what are we doing?
I have not heard of any, but if there are any that need to be set up, then that can definitely happen.
I have some thoughts and questions,
Sure.
and I hate to be that person. I
No,
don't want to be.
You're here to be that
Other
person.
people
You're
have
here to be that
questions,
person.
I can go last. So I guess my question is really around kind of a financing agreement. I don't feel like there's been any mention of a financing agreement or contract. And I just want to ensure that, especially if at the very end around contract rescission and refunds, that any type of third party financing agreement is also canceled. And I just don't know if I'm open to where it could be included, but I think we do need to mention that should be canceled. At the same time.
That's a point that was talked about while this statute was being drafted. And I don't know that the version of the statute that got passed really touches on that. The cancellation parts, the right to cancel, and the 5-day right to cancel, it's in there about you also have to cancel the loan. But as far as the rescission, after that 5 days, if the commission orders a refund, can it also order the cancellation of the finance agreement? I don't know that we have that power in the statute.
So it sounds like if the equipment is taken off and they're not receiving any services, they would still have to pay the $60,000 contract?
No. During the 5-day right to cancel, if you cancel, it also cancels the finance agreement. I think that's the case. Let's take a look at the statute. But I think we're talking about two different things. So in the statute, one of the remedies the department can use if there's been a violation is to order contract rescission and order a refund. So that'll be long after this 5-day right to cancel. It's, you were lying to people, you did things that were really bad, and it's one of our remedies, in addition to seeking a fine or seeking to suspend your license, we can also seek to order you to make the consumer whole. At that point, which is going to be years after you've signed this contract, I don't know if we have authority over the financing part of it. I don't know if we have the authority to cancel the loan at that point. I think so, but during that 5 days that you have a right to cancel it, I believe it's in our statute that.
I think that was something that I brought up during the bill drafting and was told that the agency has the ability to cancel the third party contract, or the executive director would be if action after a notice of a hearing found some type of violation.
I mean, that would make sense.
I'm looking at let me share the statute up.
Yeah, that's in the statute. The if after the hearing, tongue-tied.
All right, so I see it.
The commission or the 207. Commission or executive director can order the cancellation of an agreement for the sale or lease of a system and refund the amount of any money paid under that agreement.
Well, so I guess I'm saying something. So let's say somebody signs a contract, but then also is referred or has to take out some $60,000, let's say, loan. Generally, they're referred to by the salesperson, and the contract with the installer is canceled. They made 3 payments, and that $2,000 is refunded back, but they still have the $60,000 contract that hasn't been canceled, it sounds like, and it isn't something that they have. I mean, they've paid the $2,000, and so they would get that money back, but it doesn't sound like the financing agreement is going to be canceled, so they would still owe that third party.
I think it depends on how you read order the we can order the cancellation of an agreement. I mean, agreement. You're talking about an agreement that says agreement. We can order that to be canceled.
So can we expand the definition of an agreement or the definition of the solar contract to ensure any type of third-party financing that is generally referred to, the salesperson may refer the customer to?
I think we
Another
can
question.
clarify that. Yeah.
I don't know that we have regulatory authority over whoever that loan gets assigned to. I think that's part of the problem. Is that after they sell you the solar panels and make you sign the loan, that loan is going to get sold to someone else who we don't regulate. And I don't know that we have regulatory authority over whoever purchases that loan. We definitely have authority over the contract itself. We can put in there that we can require you to put in the contract that has this cancellation provision. I don't know.
What if, and I'm just trying to think of creative solutions here, so I'm not sure if this is where we land, but what if you order the retailer to pay off the loan?
Okay.
In order like to return, and I don't know, that's just, I don't know about the kind of interpretive questions around how you interpret these terms. I'm just trying to think of a possible functional solution to this problem. But yeah, you've got a retailer who committed some violation that was egregious enough to result in a hearing. And you're trying to cancel the sale. You're trying to order the cancellation of the sale to really get the sale canceled and kind of get the parties back to where they should be. The loan from, if there's a loan from a third party, right? This wouldn't apply to like retail installment contracts with the seller necessarily. Well, it might apply if a retail installment contract got assigned to someone, or like leases. But if you want to get the parties back, the retailer got a windfall because they got some advance of money from a lender for the sale, but they committed some wrong or violation. Maybe they use their proceeds to pay off the financing. I don't know. I realize that's a bit outside the box, but
I see
I don't know what y'all think about that.
Well, the one caveat I see is here in 1806-207. It says the amount of refund order of this section may not exceed the amounts paid under the agreement. So I think you could order them to refund the amount the consumer has paid under the loan, but I don't know if you can order them to pay off the interest and any prepayment penalty and all that they would have to do to pay off the loan. I don't.
Well, your larger issue is actually that the industry is moving away from loans completely. Like these are all going to be third-party owned systems with massive consequences. If they are ownership can't transfer, it has to remain with the third-party owner for at least 5 years. And so I like the notion of like some sort of pay the price of something, like, recapture their commissions or something, whatever it is. But the logistics of paying off someone's debt or obligation is going to be more complicated. I think somehow we got to figure out a way to regulate the lenders, the financial institutions that are also authorizing these contracts. They also need to ride along with this consumer. You got to go where the money is, and wherever the money's flowing from, they need to be the most regulated, because they're kind of the ones that are allowing this to continue. And so they need to also cancel contracts, as we've already said. Like if it's been deemed necessary that a violation has occurred, they need to release those customers from any financial obligation. I don't know how you do. I thought that the provision did allow that. So it sounds like there's work.
And I would say, if you ask Senator Zaffarini if that's what she intended, she would say, "Yeah, I did not intend for someone to get a $2,000 refund, but still owe $60,000 on a contract that's been canceled." So we may need to ask for maybe perhaps a letter of intent, something like that, to clarify. But
let me ask Mr. Nance, are there OCCC rules or regulations that your agency could use on the loan side to require a cancellation of loan?
I don't know. I can take a look at that. It's kind of, yeah, the violation, I need to kind of wrap my head around if there's a violation of 1806, is that the lender's violation? Right? I mean, our agency can order refunding for violations of the finance code. We regulate lenders who loan at effective rates of interest of more than 10% a year, and creditors who enter or take assignment of retail installment contracts that have rates greater than 0%. We don't regulate leases, and we would not, to the extent that a power purchase agreement is or isn't a lease, I don't think we regulate that unless there's like a finance charge for the service of the power. But let's just generally say we're regulating, if what I'm hearing from Mark is right, kind of our agency is regulating lenders in what sounds like an increasingly small minority of transactions. So we do regulate some of the lender companies. They have regulated lender licenses with us. Could we order cancellation of the contract for violations of 1806? I might have to study that. I'm not sure of the pathway for our agency to do that, especially if the violation was committed by the
retailer.
Yeah, right. 1806 seems to be largely about violations by the retailer. So I'm it's not that I'm like totally closed off to it. I'm just trying to wrap my head around the statutory pathway to that. So I'm not sure, but I could take a look at that.
Industry practice right now is there's an investigation that the financiers do, and if they deem that fraud was committed, they will charge back the installer, and then the installer will charge back the retailer the full amount. And so there's already some self-regulation happening, but if we had the state really hold the fire to the lender to execute on those chargebacks, they're just going to follow the path of money. They're going to go get their money back from the installer. They all have insurance for these things. And really, like, we've got to find a way to hold lenders accountable. That's where all the consumer protection access lives. And so the retailers and the installers we will align our interests with the lender to ensure that we get paid, including the disclosures. See, the reason I'm already incorporating a lot of these disclosures is because the lenders are now starting to require it for me to get paid so that I can pay the retailer. So you get the lenders on board, which is actually what Recheck did. All the lenders in the industry are now subscribing to Recheck as a platform to keep track of who all these salespeople are and where they are, because they change retailers constantly. Some of them are dual badging, right? They're wearing 3 or 4 different brands to go sell whatever product they need. So yeah, whatever we can do to hold lenders accountable for consumer protection is our gateway to really delivering the outcome.
Mark, I want to understand what you mean by the lenders, because you're also saying that predominantly the industry is doing the power purchase agreements and leases. So when you say the lenders, do you mean like the people providing the commercial?
The financiers who are financing the capital requirements to either do a finance purchase, or a third-party owned system. We in the industry, we call them financiers or lenders, even though they're not consistent loans.
Yeah, well, it's important because it matters to like whether anyone can go after them. So you're talking about like in the case of a power purchase agreement, you're talking about companies making commercial or business loans to like the retailers, is that right? They're not, or are they also making like loans to consumers?
So the consumer will sign up for a power purchase agreement or a lease for 20 years. That financier, that asset holder, then pays the installation company for the construction, and that includes the retailer's commission. The installation company then pays the retailer. And so they're the they're the invested party. That's where the money's coming from. And then they hold that asset, sell that asset, they service that asset, whatever they do with that asset, they claim the tax benefits and the depreciation. Those are the people we need to hold accountable for consumer protection.
Okay, and there's not really currently a regulator for most business to business loans, like to, make a loan for the capital to make for one business to make a loan to another business for the capital to lease out to people. There is currently
I don't know if it's business to business. It's really the customer is signing it. It's just it's just the installer retailer then getting the funds. Correct, Mark?
Yeah, exactly. So the customer will sign a 20-year lease agreement with a third-party owned company and asset holder. But in order to engage that financing company that's providing the services, they are the service provider. On paper, they are the service provider. But then what they do is they contract out all the construction, the sale, all of the things that are required to ensure that the system gets installed and serviced long term to companies like mine. They say, look, you're now on the hook for 10 years. You have a warranty that you have to promise me on this contract. And if anything goes awry, I'm holding you accountable. They turn around and, that's the agreement that I signed with them. In exchange, when I hit certain milestones, they pay me money. Right.
I think Steven has found the solution here.
Well, I don't know a solution. I did want to point out, if the required contract provision 806-155 about third-party lenders, this deals with the 5-day right to cancel. That you have to put in the contract that if the consumer cancels under 1806-156, that any third-party lender has to cancel the accompanying loan. Maybe we could, in our rules, require a contract provision that requires third-party loan to be canceled in the event the department orders a refund. Maybe we could do it that way. Under 1806-207, we could. Just thinking out loud, but maybe we could do that. I'll show you what I mean. What if here under required contract provision, we could probably, let's see. Okay, here in 9, if a sale or lease of residential solar system involves third-party lender it's affiliated with or referred by solar retailer, must include a provision that the third-party lender cancel any accompanying loan made by the third party. Should we add in here? It says upon the buyer or lessee's cancellation of 1856. What if we put in the event of a refund, a rescission is ordered? Should we put that in there? Oh, you're saying make them pay off the loan if the contract decision? We could say,
yeah. I mean, that's essentially. I like what Matt's saying. That as long as there's due process, right? Because one thing that we do also run into is customers have learned, oh, well, if I just complain to the right people and hire the right attorney, I now have a free system on my roof. I can just, lie about this or lie about that. That also has happened to us. And then the lender charges us back, and literally we end up paying for the customer to have a system. So long as we have due process and under, some level of compliance that's checking both sides of the story here, we follow legal process. What happens in the industry is that the installation company and the retailer collectively resolve the outstanding balance. It gets fully charged back, and the loan or the lease or the PPA is fully canceled. And the installation company and the retailer are held accountable financially for that. That's what the financiers are doing right now, the big ones. And it's painful. Sometimes they charge us back before they even go do the due diligence. It actually is very frustrating, because then we have documentation saying, no, we followed protocol. The customer's lying. Here's our proof. And we have to go fight for our money, So I could get behind, the combination of the installation company and the retailer. Look, if you want, we already hold our retailers accountable for, wherever we can. Sometimes they're hard to catch though after they leave the state, Ultimately, again, it falls on the installation company, unfortunately, because I'm the one here. I'm the one with trucks and people and customer service. And so I carry the bag and the liability beyond even the service providers and the financiers.
I'm sorry, what, I don't see the rule number that you're under.
Oh, I'm here in rule 1740.
Okay.
7140.
Okay,
This is what I'm
thank you.
thinking about doing is here in 9, we could add this. So basically, if you're ordered to give a refund after you've had a notice and a hearing, then you got to pay off the loan. We'll make that something you have to put in the contract. That doesn't mean that we can make you pay it off. I mean, well, you got to put it in your contract. What if we do that?
That seems like a reasonable approach.
We can workshop that.
Yeah, a good start.
1806, 207. Otherwise, you get a notice and a hearing before the executive director would order a refund. They have to find a violation of the chapter or rule. So you get a hearing first. But and I don't know that the enforcement plan really talks about refund or rescission as a remedy. I don't want to get with John Medlock about that. But
still,
why don't we?
Still work in progress for sure.
Work in progress. Let's why don't I email this to everybody, or have Alex do that after the meeting, so you can review this and add your comments.
I do have one other question, and I would love somewhere in there. Another issue that I'm hearing is that maybe the customer isn't aware that they're going to have to change electricity providers, or that they or that there's an issue with I'm trying to find it. It's somewhere. Oh,
I can help you out, Stephanie. So often, in order for customers to receive the savings that they're promised, there is a need for them to change their retail electric provider. That definitely needs to be part of the disclosure section.
Yes.
If a retail energy provider switch is required, it is disclosed in the disclosure section. And an acknowledgement that the retail provider that you do choose will impact the savings analysis, right? That's something that we provide as well. So
somewhere in the language it says that it does the residential retailer does the check to make sure that the solar provider will accept the solar panels, or it's able to connect to them? Is that a requirement, or is it on the contract?
Right. Well, we're talking about
on the customer.
I think that part is talking about interconnection to the transmission and distribution utility, the TDU. Basically, the company that's maintaining the wires going into your home, whether it's Encore or CenterPoint or AEP, depending on where you are, that they have to approve you feeding electricity back onto the grid. And there's some PUC utility code statutes about.
And is that the salesperson's job to check to make sure that the the consumer will be able to kind of transfer over?
About things.
I think we have in here, someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we have in here that if selling electricity back onto the grid is part of the contract, part of the arrangement, that they have to get the approval of the utility. Yeah, so that's in the statute. You also see it here in 7140 7B, approval by the electric utility, electric cooperative, or municipally owned utility. By the way, those are technical definitions under the utilities code, but basically those aren't REPs. They might also be REPs, but those are the TDUs. Those are the ones that are operating the wires that come into your home. You have to get their approval to feed back in. It's something called reverse metering, and there's some they have to get their permission to send electricity back onto the grid to sell it.
That's a regulated process in the installation. There's a tariff application that must be filled out and approved by the utility before the system can be interconnected and placed into service. So that's already being managed and monitored.
Okay, that's good to know.
But they are a part. That is the retailer's responsibility that under this that they have to obtain that approval, just like they also have to get the city's approval for the permit. So
it's actually not the retailer's responsibility. If you have made it the retailer's responsibility, that's the wrong person to be responsible. It is the installation and electrical contractor's responsibility to obtain all permits, approvals, utility applications under our master electrician license.
That's a good point. Well, it has in here solar retailer or installer. So the contract has to identify one or the other that has to be responsible.
Very good. Thank you for clarifying. Yes,
that's yeah.
Well,
thanks.
The language shows that this is where I had the question. State the name and where is it at? The okay, so B, the approval of the electricity utility, electric cooperative, or municipally owned utility serving the person's residence. So that it could then be changing. Is it because in a competitive market you have multiple companies that serve that residence? So
let me help you with that. That's confusing. A retail electric provider, what you're talking about in the deregulated part of tech, the part where you get to pick your power company, so to speak. I don't believe they're considered a utility. That's not what's meant by that. A utility is the transmission and distribution utility. So in deregulated parts of Texas, you have the REP, a retail electric provider, and that's the company that you pick their plan. And there's an electricity facts label, and your rights as consumer through PUC. You pick your provider. The transmission and distribution utility, or TDU, is the company that maintains at a wholesale level the electrical grid. They maintain the wires that come into your home. And then the PGC, the power generation company, is the company that generates electricity. And then all three of those are separately regulated by PUC. And in parts of Texas that aren't deregulated, you have a traditional monopoly utility where the co-op or the municipality, so Austin Energy in Austin, or you have Bandera, you have the different co-ops. They do all three still. They operate, they're generating, they're providing the transmission and distribution utility, and they effectively serve as your retail electric provider. So I think what this is focusing in on is the TDU. It's focusing in on getting the approval from the wire company, so to speak, to feedback on the grid. I don't know if that requires the rep's approval. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's confusing.
It does
Now,
not.
I'll chime in here. Stephen, this is Mike at the PUC. The poles and wires company you don't have a choice in that. There's just, depending on where you're geographically located, you just have one poles and wire company, one TDU. So there's not the option to choose that. They're monopoly providers. And yeah, the retail electric provider does not have a role in that interconnection approval from the TDU. It's just between the TDU and the customer or the installer.
Got it. So Mark, you're saying that there's already a process that has already been set so that the appropriate person then ensures that the customer is able to be connected to the TDU?
Yes.
Okay.
Now, the consumer protection concern there, Stephanie, is the length of time that it takes the installation company that's responsible for applying for that approval and doing what's required to get the customer connected, because the system is inevitably worthless until it gets placed in service with the utility and gets that approval. So what you're probably speaking to is, how do we hold installation companies accountable, or in this case, retailers accountable, to ensure that this is happening in a timely manner? And that is extremely difficult to do because you're dealing with also a utility that moves at their pace.
Yeah.
Different times of the season, utilities can take weeks, if not months, to approve applications depending on their bandwidth. And so that's one thing that I'm advocating for, is as we raise the bar for retailers and we raise the bar for companies, we also need to raise the bar for our friends that manage the poles and wires, right? We've got to raise the ships and the tide together, because the speed in which utilities move also directly impacts the amount of savings that the customer can and will receive. And there's companies that go out of business in that process. Actually, there's installation companies that will sell you a solar system, promise you to get connected, and then before the utility approves them, they've shut their doors, and now this customer's like, where did I get lost in the abyss? Right?
Yeah.
So that's probably something you're speaking to. It is an issue.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was a concern, is that the installers were dragging their feet. That you'd buy the solar system, which nowadays you don't buy the solar system so much as you're doing the PPA, but they have to go through Encore, get it approved to. Anyway, yeah, I just want to point out in the I don't have this in the rule, but in the statute itself, it cites to the parts of the utilities code that deal with this. It's a little bit. There's 39.554, 39.916. 39.554 deals with interconnection of distributed renewable generation. That's a fancy word for solar, basically. The distributed renewable generation is this idea that people have their own solar panels, and that they're generating electricity and they're feeding the grid. And there's a procedure in here for the electric utility to approve the application. Electric utility, just understand, that's a term of art in PUC land.
Okay.
It doesn't mean the rep, but it's very confusing. I worked there for 2 years. I didn't understand what I was doing, and I got confused, and I come here. But it's very confusing. And utility code, there's two different definitions for utility. They conflict with each other.
So another concern, another thing that I've heard is around certificate of completion, and I don't think that has. I don't know if that's mentioned in here. But,
it's not mentioned in there. I did see that you had a concern about that. And I wasn't. The reason why I didn't include it in this draft is I thought that was maybe going more toward the installation side or the electrical side. But why don't you tell us about that?
There's been instances of individuals receiving a certificate of completion when their equipment is not working or not connected to the grid. And so they're kind of given reassurance that their equipment is going to be working or will be working, yet they have no recourse because they So I just don't know if there was a part in there around where we put ensuring kind of connectivity and prohibiting kind of the signage of a certificate of completion until everything has been set up.
So certificate of completion, is that something the customer signs off on to say that the work is done, this thing is installed, and I'm happy with the work? Is that basically it?
That is my understanding, but I feel like I've also received conflicting things. And I don't know if Mark, if you have a better understanding of certificate of completion.
Yeah, it goes back to a little bit about what I was saying. There's an IRS term called placed in service, which technically means, and this is important because this is the timelines that everyone's working off of in our industry. It means that I've come and I've installed a system and it's working. We've tested it and we've proven that the system is doing what it was designed to do, which is to generate power. And if we include storage, it's also able to store power. And we call it, in our industry, we call it commissioning. We commission a system and we test it and then we turn it off because the utility requires us to turn it off until they say, okay, now we need to check you. We need to make sure, we need to come out and inspect and approve. Or we need to remotely inspect and approve. And it's not until they give their green tag that we can actually turn the system back on. So from an installation company's point of view, we've done everything that we can within our control and our scope to deliver the end product. Therefore, we've now been paid and we ask the customer to pay us. And now we're both together waiting for the utility to turn the system on. That's how the industry operates. That's why I'm saying we all need to rise the accountability together, right? But to hold me accountable for the utility, that's kind of a gray area. Now, what I will say is there's a curing period. If the utility comes out and inspects, it says, nope, this isn't good enough, then me as the contractor, I must cure that failed inspection within X amount of time, to ensure that I'm back on track. That's the kind of provision I would be willing or interested in putting in, like all failed inspections are cured within X amount of days. But to hold me accountable for a utility that might take up to 6 months to get out there and inspect doesn't necessarily work either, right?
Okay. Now we have a better understanding about certificate of completion.
Thank you.
Ms. Mace, I know you had some suggestions about that in the rule. You wanted to
I
include
did. I don't
you
know.
want to share up your suggestion? I pulled up the document. You had emailed me a list of suggestions. Do you want to share that up?
Sure.
Kind of go through your.
And I completely understand, Mr. Bench, your concerns, and I definitely don't want to hold if it's not in your something that you're able to remedy. I don't want to hold that against you. We want to make sure that we're holding the utility company accountable.
Okay. So this is, she sent this to me the other day. She kind of went in here and made some comments on the rules, and like I say, yesterday I incorporated some of them. I didn't
I think it's on page 7.
Okay, let's go there. Page 7. All right. What is this? Oh, you're saying you want it in English and Spanish?
Yeah, I mean that's fine. I mean, I feel like we've already kind of talked about that.
Okay, here it is. Including a certificate of completion, finance code 3. You're suggesting to put that here. Can you tell me about this?
Because I've also heard that some cities or counties don't require a permit. It sounds like that's not uniform.
You're correct. And there's 2 different jurisdictions, right? You have the AHJ, which is either a city or a county that approves work to be done. But every jurisdiction has a utility that serves it, and that utility has its own approval process. And everyone must get approval from the utility, whether the city says you can or can't. There are 2 different buckets. You got city permitting and utility authorization.
Okay.
Yeah. And to make that even more confusing, you have municipally owned utilities. So you have cities where the utility is the city, but there's a separate process for the installation.
And for the record, look, in Texas, the wonderful state that we live in, for the most part, the cities and the utilities are pretty quick. Like if you go compare us to California, good grief. Not like no comparison. Texas has been known to move quickly, which is good. So what you're speaking to is.
Wait, does that include Austin? Are you sure? Because
yeah,
I've heard.
sorry, I won't say anything about that. But generally speaking, we are a much better state to work in our industry, which is good. But yeah, like Stephanie, Miss Mace, what you're referring to is going to be more of an installation accountability of, completing work and ensuring that the certificate is accurate. And there needs to be recourse for not resolving failed inspections by utility or city within a certain amount of time. That's one way we can hold electrical contractors in place. This provision doesn't speak to that, which, that's another discussion probably for another day. But
all right. So it has here in your draft language about past required inspections and the solar system is operable and generating power and we already have that interconnection.
Yeah, that's in another spot. But it is passing the required inspections.
Okay, so again, that's a step further. So not only are they responsible for getting approval to interconnect, they actually have to make sure it's interconnected and operating, and I think that's what you're suggesting.
I think so, but yeah, I'm definitely open to suggested changes because I know Mr. Bench has kind of educated us on the process, and so.
Well. So you want this language about passing the required inspection? Do we have comments on that or discussion on that?
I just want to go back to your. It looks like your original or the current version of the rules has or. So any permit required by a government entity for the installation or the approval of the electricity. So I would prefer and.
Okay, let me see if I can pull that up. I'll make a note of that. Why don't I do that right now?
And just some type of inspection to make sure that it's operable.
Okay.
Unless it's somewhere else.
It's not really in there, but I think that's a good point. Right now I think in the draft rules it has in there about I don't know what my WebEx is doing. It has in there about getting the approval for the interconnection and getting the permitting, but it doesn't really have in there that they have to make sure that it's it passes the inspection that it's actually operating. That's going a step further from what the act or the current version of the rules requires. So if that's what you're wanting, that we would need to add that, or we need to talk about adding that. I think, yeah, I guess that's the version. Okay. Well, why don't I put a note? Let's see, you want an and? What's the and? 71. 140. Where was this?
Right. Yeah. 7 under 7A, it says at the very end it's or. Change that to and, so it's both the permit and approval.
Yeah.
But it's gonna. I would assume it's permit required as appropriate. Not every government would require that.
Well, it has if applicable there.
Okay. Yep.
Any required permit. So I think that's fine. I think we choose that to add. I would support that change. You're also saying that you want to make it
required that it's operable.
Okay. You want to go
and
through
past inspections.
I'll put a note there that yours.
And I don't know if Mr. Bench has any suggestions, if this is appropriate, or if there was another, or the language too. I'm open to your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. I'm reading now. Probably in the I'm reading the screen, and it looks. Yeah, I think
you can share back up, Miss. So this is very confusing. So I'm sharing the version that I wrote, but do you want me to share back up the version Miss Mace sent in, so we can look at it? You want me to do that?
I think I'm good with the language. I just once you do all your adjustments again and the red lines, just if you wouldn't mind sending that version back out, so we are all working off the same document. Works great. Yep.
Okay. Excuse me. All right. Ms. Mason, did you have other things you wanted to go over?
No, sir. I think I think I've addressed all of my major concerns. Thank you, everybody.
Okay, great. And I don't think this is not the final version. I'm going to circulate another draft, and you'll be able to send me written comments. I know I'm expecting some comments from Mr. Stover. He wasn't able to be here today, or he had to leave early, I think. But he said he had some concerns about the training requirements and about the power purchase agreement, and all sorts of things. So I'm expecting some more comments. All right. Well, is there any other discussion today about the rules before we start talking about the next steps and future meetings and where we're going to go from here? All right, I'm not hearing anything. Jeff, what do you have in mind? Do you think we need to meet the subgroups again before our next main group meeting? Do you feel like we don't?
We'll maybe talk about D and E together. We're going to try for January 21st for the next large group meeting of this whole group.
Okay.
And so if the subgroups could meet between now and then, that would be great. And I'll kind of leave it up to the subgroups. I think everybody has work to do. So between now and then, based on our conversations today and just some of the things that have been raised, I know the two that I'm on, outreach and registration, we definitely have things to talk about. So we could try to schedule those for the 2 weeks prior to the 21st and get those set up, and then come back with the newest draft, your revised draft, Stephen, sort of based on everything from today and in the interim. And do this again on the 21st. Get closer to the goal.
Okay.
I think that sounds like a plan.
Sounds good. Alex, is there anything else? I don't know. I think he had to step out.
Yeah, and Alex will email everybody with
I'm here.
for those meeting dates as they come.
Okay.
Up.
Yes, we can put those up.
And I might ask Alex just to kind of email out this version that we worked up today to everyone. We made a few changes during the meeting today, and there'll be more to come. But I'll ask him I'll send it to him and ask him to email it to everyone.
And then
Right.
working off of that, the goal will be when we come back on the 21st, we'll have a new version, not the one you're distributing today, but we'll have a newer, sort of updated, better 2.0, 3.0 version, which will hopefully get us closer to a final version. We are looking at, I believe, February. Is that right, Steven? February for wanting to file?
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that have to happen between now and then. I mean, we have to get governor approval and exec approval and everything, and get it published in the register. Have a 30-day comment period. Then we have to get it from the commission and get it. We need to get these things adopted by June 1st.
Right.
So let's make it a little tight, but I think that's realistic. We'll try to publish in the middle of February if we can.
Yeah, that seems like given the calendar, really February has got to be it's got to be our goal for publication. So
I agree. If we could get a publishable product by the beginning part of February, then hopefully we can. We have to get governor office approval before we can publish.
Yeah, sometimes that could take days or weeks, or you really don't know. But with a new program and a large package like this, it'll probably take closer to weeks than days. So
yeah. All right, sounds good. Well, I really appreciate everyone's cooperation and input today. And I think it's gonna be great.
This is a great group. This is just fantastic work. So much knowledge and expertise in this group. It's kind of amazing. We're getting all your work for free, so we really appreciate it. your Christmas bonuses will be in the mail, so watch the mailbox. But really, thank you guys. We couldn't do this without you. I think that's obvious. You are bringing a lot to the table for us to make this program work eventually, and get these rules going. And just to remind everyone too, like, these rules, this is going to be solar rules 1.0, right? What we end up publishing and getting adopted in the spring. This is not the end of the line at all. It's the beginning. So there will be rule packages for years to come, amending these rules, changing these rules, adopting new rules, making tweaks, all that. So this is really our first stab, and I'm really impressed with progress we've made so far. And thank you, Stephen, for all your work.
Thank you all.
Especially. Hope you feel better soon.
Yeah,
Or
thanks.
not worse. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely going around. All right. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
You'll hear from Alex soon. Thanks.
All right. Thank you all.
Thanks.